Imagine being arrested for a murder you didn't commit. Imagine being beaten until you finally confess to it. And then imagine spending the next 10 years of your life behind bars, knowing that the real killer is still out there living freely. But here is the part nobody expected. When the truth finally comes out, this man doesn't just clear his name, he goes after everyone who destroyed his life. This is the story of Hyun, a young man whose life is completely destroyed by a corrupt investigation, and the lawyer who decides to risk everything to bring the truth back into the light. The story begins in the year 2000. Hyun is riding his motorcycle home, completely lost in his own thoughts. He's distracted, looking for a lighter in his pocket, when suddenly a man appears directly in front of him. Hyun slams on the brakes. The motorcycle crashes, and the stranger immediately runs away. Hyun barely has time to understand what happened before he notices something horrifying nearby. There is a taxi, and inside it is a dead man. The driver has been brutally murdered. Hyun does what any innocent person would do. He calls the police. He waits there, and he agrees to tell them everything he saw. He thinks he's helping. He has no idea that this decision is about to destroy his entire life. When Detective Beek arrives, he recognizes Hyun almost immediately. Hyun already has a bad reputation. He's known for getting into fights and causing trouble. Then, Beek searches his motorcycle. Inside, he finds a sharp tool. To Beek, that's enough. He doesn't care about the truth. He just wants the case closed. And Hyun is the perfect person to blame. The investigation quickly turns against him. The police claim that Hyun killed the taxi driver. Hyun keeps insisting that he's innocent, but nobody wants to listen. He's eventually sentenced to 15 years in prison. His appeal reduces the sentence to 10 years because of the lack of solid evidence. 10 years. 10 years of his youth stolen from him. 10 years behind bars for a crime he never committed. But the nightmare doesn't end there, because even after his release, the system continues treating him like a murderer. His mother, who has gradually lost her eyesight, is told that Hyun still owes compensation to the victim's family. The insurance company had paid the victim's family $40,000. With years of interest added, the amount has grown to around $100,000. So Hyun isn't just a man who lost 10 years of his life. He's also a man who's expected to pay for a murder he didn't commit. Meanwhile, another man is struggling with his own life. His name is Lee, a young lawyer who has spent years losing case after case. His wife has completely lost faith in him. Even his own daughter sees him constantly fighting with his wife. Lee's latest case ends in another embarrassing defeat. As soon as he leaves the courtroom, angry clients surround him, demanding their money back. Instead of facing them, Lee pretends to be busy on the phone and runs away. He doesn't even stop to talk to his wife and daughter. He's desperate. He needs a chance. And then, an old university friend gives him one. Lee manages to get a small opportunity at a major law firm. But there is a problem. The company's director only cares about money. Justice isn't exactly his priority. Lee eventually gets a temporary position providing free legal consultations. At first, he thinks this is the beginning of his comeback. but the reality is much less exciting. His job is basically to sit there and wait for poor people who can't afford lawyers. And that is how he ends up with Hune's case. When Lee arrives at Hune's home, he introduces himself and explains that he's there to help cancel the compensation claim. But Hyun doesn't want help. The moment he hears the word lawyer, he explodes. He grabs a weapon and threatens Lee and his assistant. His mother tries to calm him down. She tells him that even if lawyers are dishonest, he should at least try, because doing nothing isn't going to change his life. Eventually, Hyun calms down enough to listen. Lee explains that he isn't asking Hyun for money. He wants to reopen the case. He wants to prove that Hyun didn't kill the taxi driver. Hyun finally looks at him and says something that changes everything. I didn't kill anyone. Lee is shocked. He realizes this isn't just a man trying to escape compensation. Hyun genuinely believes he was framed. So he asks him to tell the story from the beginning. And that is when we go back 14 years. On the day of the murder, Hyun had gone shopping with his uncle to buy clothes for school. He kept complaining that he didn't even want to go back to school. But deep down, he was excited about starting a new life. Later that day, he returned to the bar where he worked. And that is where he first saw Detective Beek. Beek had come there because he was interested in a new young employee named Young. She was still a student, but Beek didn't care. He used his position as a police officer to intimidate her and get close to her. Hyun hated watching it happen. He wanted to help her, but he was afraid of getting involved, so he stayed quiet. Later that night, Hyun left the bar and headed home on his motorcycle. That is when the stranger suddenly appeared in front of him. Hyun crashed his motorcycle to avoid hitting him. Then he discovered the murdered taxi driver. He immediately called the police, but instead of thanking him, Detective Beek decided to make him the murderer. Hyun was taken to a hotel room and interrogated. But this wasn't a normal interrogation. Beek beat him again and again and again. Hyun refused to confess, so the violence became worse. They humiliated him, they stripped him, they stomped on his hands. Every time Hyun said, I'm innocent, they beat him harder. But Beek needed more than a confession, he needed evidence. So they found a sharp tool from Hyun's home that matched the description in the report. Now the confession looked believable. Hyun was completely powerless. Eventually, he realized that nobody was coming to save him. So he gave them what they wanted. He confessed. And the innocent young man who had called the police became the official murderer. Back in the present, Lee is stunned by Hyun's story. But instead of feeling sympathy, he sees an opportunity. The murder had once been a huge media story. If his law firm could reopen the case, it could be excellent publicity. So Lee presents the idea to his boss. He explains that whether Hyun is innocent or guilty, the case could still improve the company's public image. And there is another benefit. If Hyun is proven innocent, the compensation claim disappears. The director likes the idea. He gives Lee permission to investigate. For the first time in his career, Lee starts taking a case seriously. He studies every document, every report, every piece of evidence, and something immediately feels wrong. The evidence against Hyun is incredibly weak. Even the interrogation methods raise serious questions. Then Lee notices something else. The moment a clerk sees Detective Beek's name in the old files, her expression changes. She tells Lee that Beek was known for using illegal interrogation methods. Now, Lee realizes that this case may be much bigger than he thought. But while Lee is digging into the past, Beek is still doing the same thing. He's still beating suspects until they confess. Then Beek hears that someone is trying to reopen Yoon's case, and he panics. He can't allow that to happen. Meanwhile, Hyun is struggling with his own demons. He drinks heavily every night because it is the only way he knows how to escape his memories. One night, a gang leader named Kang visits him. Kang offers him a job. There is a man they want dead. All Hyun has to do is kill him and help bury the body. Hyun refuses. He tells Kang that he's innocent. He never killed anyone. Kang laughs. He tells Hyun that the law doesn't protect everyone. Some people get justice, other people get thrown into prison, and Hyun should stop dreaming about fairness. Something inside Hyun snaps. He hits Kang with a bottle. Later, Lee visits Hyun and tells him about an important detail in the report. According to the report, the murder took only 2 minutes and 18 seconds. Lee realizes something doesn't make sense. How could Hyun crash his motorcycle, get off, enter the taxi, kill the driver, and escape, all within 2 minutes and 18 seconds? So they go back to the crime scene. They recreate everything. Lee starts the stopwatch again and again and again. Every single attempt takes much longer, around 4 minutes and 50 seconds, not 2 minutes and 18. That is the real piece of evidence proving that Hyun's story could be true. But they need more. So they return to the abandoned hotel where Hyun was interrogated. And there, Lee finds torn interrogation documents lying on the floor. Suddenly, he understands. Beek's methods weren't just wrong, they were part of a much bigger cover up. The case is becoming dangerous. But for the first time in years, Hume begins to feel something he had almost forgotten: hope. He even returns to the workshop where he used to work and asks for his old job back. He promises the owner that he won't cause trouble anymore. He just needs money. Meanwhile, Lee starts changing too. He begins helping people in the village with free legal advice. One night, Hyun sees Lee surrounded by ordinary people, helping them without asking for money. He's surprised. He asks Lee why he became a lawyer in the first place. Lee tells him about his childhood. He wasn't successful. He wasn't talented. But one day, he decided he wanted to prove to everyone that he could succeed. He studied, he entered law school, and eventually he became a lawyer at a major firm. Hyun is moved by his story. He takes out the small amount of money he has and gives it to Lee. "This is everything I have," he says. "Consider it your legal fee." It is not much, but for Lee it means everything. For the first time, he feels like a real lawyer. The two men spend the night going through the case files, and they realize something important. If Hyun didn't commit the murder, then someone else did. Lee asks Hyun to remember everything he saw that night. And finally, Hyun remembers something. Before he left the bar, he heard the owner banging on Young's door. He was drunk. He wanted to get inside. Young was terrified. She locked the door, but he kept banging. Eventually, he broke the door down. Young grabbed a sharp tool to defend herself. Hyun couldn't stand there and watch anymore. He attacked the owner and pulled him away from her. But Young was furious. She wanted revenge. She was ready to kill him. Hyun stopped her. He hid the weapon and walked her to the bus. Before she left, he gave her a university application book. He told her to leave this place behind and to start a new life. He promised they would meet again at university, but Hyun never got the chance. Instead, he went to prison. Lee now knows that Young could be the key witness, but before he can reach her, someone comes to see him. But before he can reach her, someone comes to see him. It is the police chief who was responsible for Beak, and he makes Lee an offer. Drop the case. In return, Lee will receive a stable job at a prestigious law office. It is the kind of opportunity Lee has always wanted. But this time, he refuses. The chief then shows him a shocking document, a letter supposedly written by Hyun himself, apologizing for the murder. Lee immediately becomes suspicious. Why would an innocent man write a confession? He calls Hyun and demands an explanation. Hyun becomes angry. He tells Lee that he was forced to write it. He had no choice. His mother was losing her eyesight. He couldn't keep making her suffer. So he accepted a shorter prison sentence in exchange for signing that letter. Before Lee can process everything, something terrible happens. His car is hit by another vehicle. Lee is rushed to the hospital. Hyun immediately runs there. He doesn't care about anything else anymore. Lee has become more than his lawyer. He has become his friend. But someone warns Lee that he should walk away. Hyun is dangerous. If the case fails, he might come after Lee. Lee doesn't listen. The next day, Hyun finally finds Young. He asks her to testify, but she refuses. She is afraid that if people discover her past, her reputation will be destroyed. Hyun is depressed, but then Young follows him. She tells him something important. 3 years after the murder, the real killer confessed. Hyun can't believe it. He immediately searches for the police officer who originally worked on the case. The officer has already left the police force, but he remembers everything. 3 years after Hyun's conviction, he received a strange phone call. Someone claimed to know who the real murderer was. For the first time, Hyun realizes that the truth had been discovered years ago, but someone buried it. And that someone was Detective Beak. Meanwhile, Lee is preparing to open his own law office. Then Hyun calls him. Lee doesn't want to answer, but curiosity wins. He picks up, and Hyun says, I found the real killer. Lee drops everything and rushes to him. Hyun has already found the man. His name is Kim. And unbelievably, Kim is living a completely normal life. He works at a car dealership. He has a job, he has a life, and he has never paid for what he did. When Kim sees Hyun, he smiles. He even jokes about how long it's been. Hyun loses control. He hits him again and again. Kim runs away, but Hyun follows. Eventually, Lee catches up with them. Kim immediately claims that Hyun is threatening him. He even says he wants to sue Hyun, but Lee ignores him. Instead, he tells Kim to sit down and tell the entire story. And finally, Kim confesses. On the night of the murder, Kim killed the taxi driver. Then he ran home. His roommate saw blood all over Kim's clothes and noticed the weapon in his hand. The roommate wanted to call the police, but Kim threatened him. He told him that if he could kill one person, he could kill another. The roommate stayed silent. For 3 years, he lived with the guilt. Eventually, he couldn't take it anymore. He went to the police and confessed. But Detective B couldn't allow the truth to come out. There were elections coming. A murder scandal could destroy the police department. So Beek took Kim and his roommate to the hotel, and he beat them until they withdrew their statements. Then he went even further. He had the roommate declared mentally unstable and sent to a psychiatric hospital. The man couldn't survive the pressure there. He eventually took his own life. And Kim went back to his normal life as if nothing had happened. Lee is furious, but Hyun stops him. He tells Lee that if they really want justice, they have to prove it in court. They need evidence, not revenge. So Lee starts gathering everything. He holds a press conference and publicly asks anyone who witnessed the murder to come forward. At the same time, Hyun begins changing. He tells his mom that he wants to go back to school. He wants to continue his education. For the first time, he's thinking about his future instead of his past. Then they receive a phone call. Someone claims to have witnessed the murder, a real eyewitness. Lee is overjoyed, but he makes a terrible mistake. He tells his boss about the witness, and the information is immediately betrayed. The witness is arrested. Suddenly, the entire case collapses again. Hyun freezes when he sees Beek. The memories of the interrogation come rushing back. And then Lee discovers something even worse. His own friend has betrayed him. The same man who promised to help him build his law office secretly gave the witnesses information to the police chief. Why? The answer is money. The police chief promises him a successful career and a new law office. Lee confronts him. He explains that what he did is illegal. A lawyer can never take information from his client and hand it to the other side. Lee promises him that he will win the case and send him to prison. But the pressure this time finally becomes too much for Hyun. His mother reaches her breaking point. She tells him to leave. She says she can't keep living like this. Hyun stands outside the house crying and begging her to open the door, but she doesn't. He has lost 10 years. He has lost his future. And now he feels like he's losing his mother too. He finally screams. Years of anger, pain, humiliation, and helplessness come pouring out. Lee finally understands the lesson he's been missing. Money isn't everything, and revenge isn't the same as justice. So he walks into the law firm's meeting. Everyone expects him to give up. Instead, he announces that he will never abandon his client. He resigns. The director is shocked by the transformation. He offers Lee a permanent position, but he refuses. He tells him that he has only one goal now: prove Yoon's innocence. Lee then visits Young one more time. She still refuses to testify, so Lee gives her something. It is the university application book Yoon gave her years ago. On the cover is a drawing of Young. Yoon had drawn it himself. Lee tells her the truth. After everything she had been through, Yoon still cared about her. He had protected her. He had sacrificed his future to save her. And this was all she had given him in return? Young finally breaks down. Meanwhile, Yoon has been watching Detective Beek. He discovers the place where Beek still tortures suspects into confessing. Hyun enters. He has had enough. He attacks Beek. For a moment, it looks like Hyun is finally going to kill the man who destroyed his life. But Lee arrives just in time. He stops him. Lee tells Hyun that after everything they have been through, he can't destroy the rest of his life for Beek. Then Lee says something that finally reaches him. If Hyun wants to kill someone, he should kill Lee first. Because Lee admits that he also used Hyun's suffering to build his career. He turned the case into an opportunity. He wasn't innocent either. Hyun looks at him. His eyes fill with tears. But he couldn't do it. He can't become the kind of person Beek always believed he was. Lee promises him one thing. He will prove his innocence, and this time he does. Eventually, the court agrees to reopen the case, and Young finally decides to testify. The truth about the murder, the corrupt investigation, the forced confession, and Beek's crimes all come to light after 16 years. Hyun is finally declared innocent on November 17th, 2016. The court officially clears his name. 16 years after the murder, 16 years after an innocent young man was turned into a criminal, 16 years after the system stole the best years of his life. But Hyun's story doesn't end there. He eventually gets married. He has two children. And instead of allowing his past to destroy him forever, he chooses to build a future. As for Lee, the case changes his life too. His name becomes known because of the case, and instead of using that fame only for himself, he chooses to help people who are trapped in situations similar to Hyun's. He becomes a lawyer who fights for people who have no one else to fight for them because sometimes justice doesn't arrive quickly. Sometimes it takes years. Sometimes the truth gets buried. Sometimes innocent people are punished while guilty people walk free. But this story reminds us of something important. Being broken by injustice doesn't mean you have to become an unjust person. Hyun had every reason to become violent. He had every reason to hate the world. He had every reason to take revenge. But in the end, the greatest revenge wasn't killing the people who destroyed his life. It was proving them wrong. It was standing in front of the world and saying, I was never the criminal. And after 16 years, the truth finally spoke for itself. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe because there are many more coming your way.